The 2010s have been an incredible and sometimes confusing period for comics. There have been revamps, relaunches, and reboots aplenty, but for all the implied chaos these sorts of changes are said to bring, the decade will ultimately go down as one of the strongest the medium's ever seen. During a period in which comics have cemented themselves as pop culture's hottest commodity, and where the industry itself has struggled and strived to mirror the popularity of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, writers, artists, letterers, and editors have been busy at work fashioning some of the most compelling literature the likes of Marvel and DC have ever seen. Outside of that binary, publishers like Image, Dark Horse, and IDW have also been busy softening the Big Two's grip on the direct market, pioneering new IPs, and, in one or two instances, finally closing the door on some of their most beloved creations. And yes, while reiterating how daunting the task of ranking the last 9 years' greatest comics isn't going to invoke any sympathy, eek, when you consider just how many incredible comics have been published since 2010, it's worth pointing out. So, here it is. I'm Ewan from What Culture, and here are the 10 best comic books of the decade. Number 10. Batwoman, Greg Rucka, W. Hayden Blackman, and J. H. Williams III. Greg Rucka's first Batwoman arc was told in the pages of Detective Comics from issue 854 to 863. It went into greater detail surrounding her military background and provided a compelling new adversary in the form of Alice, a new Gotham-based villain who modeled herself on the works of Lewis Carroll. Not only that, but Rucka also portrayed Kate's sexuality in full view, providing readers with a visible lesbian protagonist, and in doing so, illustrating the value true representation has in the comics medium. Rucka's arc lasted until February 2010, and it wouldn't be until a year later when Kate's journey would resume in the pages of the New 52. Williams and Stewart stuck around, but this time they were joined by former LucasArts writer William Hayden Blackman. Starting with Hydrology, Blackman and Williams fashioned a definitive image of Kate Kane, and with it her most enduring partnership, a romance with GCPD officer Maggie Sawyer. It succeeded on every level, and Williams himself deserves particular praise for masterfully rendering Gotham in a new light. Kate's never looked better, and while Blackman and Williams' run was phenomenal, they were never given the chance to finish it properly, with DC editorial decreeing that Kate and Sawyer couldn't get married, despite the wishes of the creative team and pretty much everyone who was reading the book. A frustrating end to what was and still is one of the decade's finest arcs. Number 9. Hellboy in Hell, Mike Mignola and Dave Stewart. Although Hellboy has since returned from the grave as recently as this year, the character's definitive ending arrived in 2016. It's so rare that creative figures who created a superhero are allowed to chart their creation's journey from start to finish, but that's just what Mike Mignola managed to do on Hellboy. Hellboy loses his actual heart in the conflict, and plummets to hell thereafter, seemingly poised to inherit his other destiny as the harbinger of the apocalypse. What followed was nothing short of exceptional, as Hellboy in Hell depicted the eponymous character navigating the vast depths of pandemonium itself. Mignola continues his formidable partnership with Dave Stewart, and their version of Hell is nothing short of exceptional. The atmosphere is peerless, as is the story, which ends Hellboy's adventure in the most stunning way possible. Endings really don't get any better. Number 8. Ms. Marvel, G. Willow Wilson, Adrian Alphona, et al. It's remarkable to think about just how much Captain Marvel has changed since 2010. First, there was Kelly Sue DeConnick's highly influential reboot of the character, aided greatly by a redesign courtesy of Jamie McKelvey. And then there was Ms. Marvel, a series that means so much to so many and is so clearly one of the most important entries the medium saw this decade, if not the last two. Co-created by Sana Amanat, Stephen Wacker, G. Willow Wilson, Adrian Alphona, and the aforementioned McKelvey, Kamala Khan burst onto the scene as a Pakistani-American hero who idolized Marvel's pantheon of super beings. It was a clear recipe for success, and by the time G. Willow Wilson left the title in 2019, it was also obvious that the comic had ended as one of the decade's best. Together with Miles Morales and Spider-Gwen, Kamala is one of the most successful comic book characters introduced over the last 10 years. She's inspired a generation of readers and is on the cusp of a meteoric rise, with Ms. Marvel poised to take a leading role in Crystal Dynamics' Avengers video game next year and later in her own series on Disney+. To amass such a powerful legacy in such a short time is a testament to not only Kamala herself, but to the overall quality of the Ms. Marvel comic. Wilson's stories never missed a beat and possess the perfect amount of heart, humor, and action. Number 7. Detective Comics: The Black Mirror, Scott Snyder, Jock, and Francesco Francavilla. Let's face it, Batman hasn't been short of stellar runs this decade. Ultimately, when fans look back on the 2010s, one writer will spring to mind when they think of The Dark Knight: Scott Snyder. Before that fabled run during the New 52, Snyder was given the keys to Batman, or rather a Batman, on Detective Comics, which focused on Dick Grayson in the wake of Bruce Wayne's return in 2010. Dubbed Black Mirror, the comic saw Snyder team up with artists Jock and Francesco Francavilla to deliver a truly nightmarish take on Gotham. And while Snyder would arguably make larger contributions to Batman's lore with storylines like Court of Owls and Death of the Family, the more claustrophobic leanings of his detective run edges out his later work just about. Number 6. The Wicked and the Divine, Kieran Gillen, Jamie McKelvey, and Matt Wilson. Image Comics have had a hand in publishing so many great stories over the last 9 years, and undoubtedly one of the best has to be The Wicked and the Divine. The Wicked and the Divine presents a bold modern take on myth and legend, and focuses on a group of reincarnated deities who possess all sorts of mystical superpowers. The catch, sadly, is that they're only given 2 years to live, and you know deities, they rarely ever get along, so that cycle gets expedited in some instances too. Everything about the series just comes together perfectly. The premise is fantastic, Gillen and McKelvey are tremendous together, and Wilson's colours illustrate why he's become such a prolific talent this decade. It's sad to see it come to an end, but ultimately all good things do, and Wick Div was absolutely one. Number 5. Richard Starks Parker, Darwin Cook. It's hard to quantify just how terrible a loss Darwin Cook's passing was to the medium of comics. The late artist was beloved by his peers and readers and had amassed an incredible portfolio, plying his trade mostly at DC Comics in the mid to late 2000s. Cook created Catwoman's now iconic black jumpsuit design during a run on the comic with Ed Brubaker, which he later fleshed out in a comic he both wrote and drew called Selina's Big Score. Further seminal offerings situated in the DC universe soon followed, including The Magnificent Ego, a story that explored the dichotomy between Bruce Wayne and Batman. Later forays into the DC universe punctuated Cook's peerless contributions to the publisher, but different pastures beckoned, and it's with this in mind that Cook ventured to IDW to adapt Richard Stark's Parker novels. The first entry, The Hunter, released in 2009, but 3 further volumes followed in 2010, 2012, and 2013 respectively. They're a genuine letter of love to Donald Westlake's novels, and some of the finest stories of the last decade. Number 4. Mr. Miracle, Tom King and Mitch Gerads. Tom King and Mitch Gerads took everyone by surprise with the release of 2016's Mr. Miracle, a comic that reappraised the legacy of Jack Kirby's Fourth Will by applying an introspective take to the eponymous escape artist. King and Gerads' grasp on Kirby's signature Fourth World iconography is a highlight, but where Mr. Miracle really shines through is in its more personal moments between Scott Free and Big Barda. Scott and Barda are just so believable as a couple, and while Last Day to Live stories are nothing new, the fact that their romance is so endearing makes the issue where King and Gerads implement that trope almost heart-wrenching to sit through. It's a beautiful story that effortlessly captures one of comics' most enduring romances, and exemplifies what made King and Gerads' series such a runaway hit when it released in 2017. Number 3. The Mighty Thor, Jason Aaron, Russell Dalterman, and Matt Wilson. Before Jason Aaron took the reins on Thor in 2012, it would have been near enough blasphemous to suggest that anyone could think of equaling Walt Simonson's revered run on the character. And yet, here we are, 7 years later, with a truckload of evidence to suggest that, yes, Jason Aaron's Thor may very much be the greatest run the character's ever seen. Authored alongside Russell Dalterman and colorist Matt Wilson, Mighty Thor did away with the Odinson as the main character and replaced him with a mysterious new woman in the title role. Although her identity would be kept under wraps, as would the cause behind the Odinson's nascent unworthiness, it was eventually revealed that Jane Foster herself was the new Thor, and that she was suffering from cancer at the same time. The word stunning gets thrown around a lot with comics criticism, but the word feels apt here, with Dalterman and Wilson combining to impart some of the most incredible visuals ever seen in a Marvel comic. Number 2. Saga, Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. Emphasizing Image's success over the last 9 years is Saga, a Brian K. Vaughan Fiona Staples joint that has broken records and garnered universal acclaim over the course of its 54-issue run. A sci-fi epic centered around 2 star-crossed lovers separated by galactic conflict, Saga combines a multitude of different genres to impart a unique story of its own, and one that rarely threatens to slow down. Also central to Saga's success is Staples' art. Her work on this book is nothing short of spectacular, and she deserves particular praise for finding such a great aesthetic for the series. Sci-fi can so often blend into one bland mix of cliches, but Saga is so clearly its own thing, mixing science and fantasy together to impart something truly unique. And number 1, Hawkeye, Matt Fraction, David Ajar et al. Hawkeye is kind of the best. On his own, perhaps Clint Barton isn't the greatest Avenger, but with the talents of Matt Fraction, David Aja, and Matt Hollingsworth behind him, it's difficult to argue otherwise, especially with Kate Bishop waiting in the wings too. It's genuinely impossible to overstate just how great the 2012 Hawkeye series was. Fraction was hot on the heels of a barnstorming stint on Iron Fist alongside Ed Brubaker and Aja, but I don't think anyone could have predicted just how smart, funny, and genuinely heartwarming the writer's stint on Hawkeye would end up being. There is just too much to admire about this book. Fraction nails a voice for Clint and hones in on his everyman qualities to great effect, gifting the repeat divorcee with a pizza dog called Lucky and readers with an issue told entirely from the poocher's perspective. Fraction also reaffirms the importance of Kate Bishop, who co-leads the comic alongside Clint, and who has since gone on to star in a brilliant series courtesy of Kelly Thompson and Leonardo Romero. In short, Hawkeye was never short of surprises. Most important of all, though, was that it won our hearts and our laughter. Who'd have thought Clint Barton would be the one to do it?